So I just wanted to welcome everyone here. Thank you so much for joining us. This event is a collaboration between, I'll introduce myself, I'm Andrea with Sava. This collaboration is between Sava and HelloMD and Garden Society. And we really wanted to create an event that continue to support women in the industry. There's a lot happening, a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, and there is need for us to come together as a community and continue to work together to create the landscape that we want to see in this industry so we can be doing what we want to be doing and helping the people and serving the communities we want to serve. So we're really excited to have everyone here tonight, and I also wanted to say a special thank you to Gateway for giving us this space, and then I think Ben's going to say some words in a moment. But first I just wanted to go over a little bit about our format so that people are familiar with what the rundown is going to be. We're going to have Lori Ajax speak, and then after she speaks there's going to be an open Q&A with Lori and the rest of our amazing panel, which we will introduce shortly. So there's a lot of people here, clearly. We want everyone to be able to participate as best we can, but we also want to be mindful of how long our questions are so that everyone can have a chance to speak and participate. So if someone is going on too long, we will be cutting you off. So this is your first warning. It might not be your last, but again, we're trying to keep it as inclusive as possible so everyone can have a chance to participate. And then at the end of the night, there will be time for everyone to hang around and mingle a little bit more, be able to get additional one-on-one time and interact with each other. So welcome again. Thank you again to Gateway. I want to introduce Ben, who is the co-founder and managing director and provided us this space tonight.
I'll keep it short, as I usually do. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. It's an honor to be able to host this event and events like this. I mean, as many of you know, we're in a pivotal moment, locally, statewide, industry-wide. Not only because we're at this incredible growth stage, we're putting down laws, but we're laying the foundation. And it's very important to me personally and to the team to ensure that we support the women in our industry because we've seen industries like the tech industry, venture capital, try to retroactively address issues of inequality. And it's a very difficult battle. And so if we can do the best we can to address that in the beginning and build this industry in the vision that we see fit, it'll be a lot easier down the road. That being said, it's still not easy. We really need your help in letting the women in this industry, and there's a lot of you, obviously, you know, entrepreneurs, policymakers, advocates, consumers, you name it, like women have the ability to drive this industry and are driving this industry, and we want to make sure that we are supporting them in every way we can. And so I'm going to put this out to you. And you won't hear a venture capitalist say this very often. I'm willing to take any meeting, any phone call with any woman that wants to start a startup, wants to get investment, wants to build a company in this industry. I'll take an email, I'll take a phone call, just do whatever. I will try to be as responsive as possible. And just remind me, you can swear at me, it's okay. It's just, I will take those meetings. And maybe it's not going to be a yes right off the bat, but I promise you I will take the time to give a thoughtful response and what I do believe will make you viable for whatever it is you're trying to achieve. Maybe it's not venture capital, but if that is what you seek and that's what you're well aligned for, by all means, I will give you every tip that I can to get you there and get you into our program and get you where you need to be. So, with that, please come find us, come through our program. Carrie, I love seeing you here.
I love seeing you, Ben.
Yeah, and that's about it. I mean, I'm really excited for the topic tonight. Lori, thank you so much for making it down here. Come find me, I'll be here all night. Michael, Luke, they have my email as well. So, thank you.
With HelloMD. Thank you all for coming so much. background on this evening, we, HelloMD, Sava, and Garden Society, 2 weeks ago had this idea that there was a space in the market for us to bring women together more often. So this is one of the first of many events. So, but tonight is really a container for you all. I asked Lori a week ago if she'd come and speak, and I couldn't believe when she said yes. Another little sort of story is like, when you want something, ask for it. Right? Okay, so about Lori. So in February 2016, Governor Brown appointed Chief Ajax as the first chief of the newly formed Bureau of Medical Cannabis Regulation. So a year and a half ago, you told me earlier that this has just been a whirlwind for you, right? So she's in charge of the statewide regulation structure for medical and adult use cannabis development for basically all of the regulations and getting that ready for 2018. So we welcome you and thank you so much for coming.
Well, good evening to everybody. Thank you. Can you hear me fine back there? Great. Well, yes, it was a week ago, and I just had to move some things around, but I thought it was really important that I come here. And I'll tell you this, speaking in front of women is a lot harder than anything, because it's an intimidating group here. Because you'll call me out on whatever I say. So thank you for having me. Truly, it is an honor, and it's a wonderful space, by the way. I'm just thrilled to be here. So, and I think it's good that I sort of give you an idea of where the state is when it comes to our regulation and what is going on, because I think the best thing I can do is get information out there, tell you how you can get involved, and then we continue to have these kinds of ongoing dialogue, because I will say this over and over again. It's not the Bureau, it's not me, it's everybody getting involved in this in order for us to get this right, have a model we're proud of, and it does take all of us. And we can't do it without your help, your feedback, and we're very lucky in California because it has a very robust, when it comes to regulations, we're like no other state. Very robust California rulemaking system that encourages public involvement. So first of all, I will say this, we are the lead agency in this effort, but by no means are we the only agency. As most of you know, the Bureau is responsible for the dispensaries, the distributors, the transporters, the micro businesses, and I'm leaving something, testing laboratories, thank you. And then we partner up, there's 2 other licensing authorities. Public Health is issuing the manufacturer's license, and Department of Food and Ag is responsible for licensing and regulating the cultivator. So all 3 of us are licensing. Very unusual. You don't usually see 3 different licensing authorities. So, and it was very hard when I first came in. So I came from the alcohol industry, spent 22 years there, worked for the Alcoholic Beverage Control, never really thought I'd be doing cannabis. I didn't think that at all. I was pretty happy. Anyway, this sort of came my way, and I thought, hey, I can do this. I'm regulating alcohol. How hard can this be? Oh boy. So you come in with like, I can figure this out, and within the first few weeks, I realized this was like no other product that I had seen. It means so many things to so many different people. This plant alone it was just amazing how complex it is, but actually fascinating, interesting, and a huge challenge. So not to put down alcohol, but that's a simple product compared to this. So I knew I had my work cut out for me, and since it was a newly formed bureau, you don't really see a lot of growth in government, so I was the first one hired, so immediately it was getting down to business and staffing. And I do want to introduce, I'll tell you what, this wonderful lady over in the back is my assistant chief counsel. I couldn't do any of this without her guidance, and she's here tonight. She comes down with me because I'm like, oh, you got to come with me. I can't do this on my own. So you have another woman now. that's leading the charge, and she's very committed. And I'm going to tell you, our entire Bureau staff is committed to this. We're not a huge group, we're small, but I say we're mighty and we're motivated and we want to get this done. And I say it time, I'm going to cut off the question of will you make the timeline, and I'm going to keep saying yes. We have strategies. We believe we can make those timelines, because I think time doesn't change things. We need to get this regulated. We need to start issuing licenses. And then once we start issuing licenses, we know there's going to have to be some changes. We're probably going to have to make some tweaks, but we don't know until we start regulating it. So I think waiting longer isn't the way to go. We got to get this up and running. And like I said, that's going to be a heavy lift, but we can all do it. And I think with your brilliant ideas out there, we'll get it done. So that's the structure. So we do a lot of coordinating with both Public Health and Food and Ag. So what just came out a month ago from all three of us? Our what? Our draft, we call them draft proposed for the medical regulations. So those are out there. They're out there on our website. We have a new cannabis portal. How do you like that? It's cannabis.ca.gov. When did you think you'd ever see cannabis.ca.gov? And I think they even allowed us to have a cannabis plant on our website. So it's a one-stop shop. So instead, we each have separate websites, but this is one portal that you can get into, and you can go to any of the three licensing authorities' website. But on there, we have all of our draft regulations. We have our economic analysis out there. So it's please visit it if you get a chance. But you can read our draft regulations. So right now, we're all three licensing authority are either in the middle or just getting ready to have our regulation hearings. And what that means is that we're going to be, the Bureau is going to 4 different places around the state. We start next Thursday, we'll be in Eureka for our regulation hearing, and then we're going to head to LA, Sacramento, and San Jose for our regulation hearing. So as most of you know, we did a lot of public outreach before we got to the point of issuing those draft regulations. So we first went around the state doing what we call the information session. And I think you were at one of them, and I told her, was that the one when I didn't know anything? And she said yes. Yeah. Okay, that was the information session, because literally I was running around, I didn't know anything. So a lot has changed. We did our pre-regulatory meetings. I had learned quite a bit by then. And so we utilized a lot of that feedback we got from those outreach with stakeholders, and we talked with the industry. All of us did tours, go into manufacturing facilities, testing labs, dispensaries, and then we started developing our regulations. So what you see is based on the Medical Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act, because right now we have 2 different statutes. We have MCRSA and we have AUMA. So what you're going to see as the proposed is for the medical. And so all of that is in there, and the regulations hearings is you can come and you can give us public comment. And it's not going to be interactive like the other 2 meetings. So I'm going to prepare you all. That's not how the regulations, you come up, we have a court reporter, you tell us this is our public comment, and you can give it orally. You can also provide it to us through email and written form, and you can mail it to us. And so you're probably asking, like, what about adult regs, right? Well, I'm going to answer that question too. See, there won't be any questions by the time I get done. So we got the medical regs. We're in our public comment period, right? We're doing all that. And while this is all going on, there's something called the Governor's Budget Trailer Bill language. And how many are familiar with that? So important also to keep on top of that, reading that. So that is the Governor's Budget Trailer Bill. He is trying to align the 2 systems, the MCRSA with the AUMA. And why would you think we'd want to do that?
Money.
Money. Not money for us, but
Better spending on 2 systems.
Correct. Thank you. Yeah. So more efficient, right? Less confusing, right? Does it make sense if we say, hey, this is what you have to do if you want a medical license, this is what you have to do if you have an adult use, and they're different? Who can figure that out? I don't know. We're all smart, but we don't need to have, that's a lot of it sounds like a lot of bureaucracy, right? So it's their attempt to come to a deal to align the two models so we're regulating it as one system. So when we say an owner under medical is going to be the same whether you have a medical or adult use. So right now that is a bill. It has to be passed by the legislature, 2/3 vote, because we are changing Proposition 64, so it needs a higher threshold. So right now we don't know what is going to come out at the end. We likely should know, hopefully by end of June. I don't know for sure, but that's going to really change things for us as we go forward with our adult use regulations. So what may happen is that we're going to be pulling back our medical regs, because if MCRSA is no longer there, if it's all been now aligned into one, we're going to have to pull those medical regs. And so people are like, well, why the heck would we want to comment on the medical regs if you may pull them? Why do you think? A couple of things. So one, I went around the state telling everybody you're going to have a chance to weigh in on these, but that's one. We need to hear from you now. So, we went around saying we're going to do this, but had no idea at the time that this was all going to happen. These things, every day changes. So one, we said there's going to be a chance to provide public comment, but even more than that is most of what is in these draft regulations, most of those provisions will end up in the adult use regulations. So here's the dilemma. I just told you California regulations and the process is a very defined process where you go through the Office of Administrative Law, you have a 45-day comment period, we have public hearings, then if we make changes, you go out for another comment period, and you can go back and forth for a while. You can tell that takes a long time, right? Well, by the time this trailer bill is passed, and there's a lot of other pending legislation. How many bills are out there just on cannabis alone right now? It's over 60 actually. 60 bills that we don't know what's going to happen. So by the time this all gets settled, we know what trailer bill says, we know most of what's going on with pending legislation. We will not have time with the adult use regulations to go through this process on the front end. So we will use our emergency rulemaking authority, which means that we'll notice our adult use regulations in early fall. They become effective almost immediately, I think within 10 days, and then the public comment is on the back end. Okay, so having the comment right now is more valuable for us. Because we want to hear, I already heard from some ladies, we got some manufacturers in the house, right? Just so you know, public health developed the regulations for manufacturers. And by the way, I'm going to tell you, they're a great group of people at public health, really care about this product, really care what they're doing. But one of the things we talked about is, you know what, they're proposed regulations. What does that mean? That means we expect they're going to change. This is by no means the final. This is what we've come up with all of our research on other state, public outreach, what we think is best practices. But guess what? We're not in the business, right? I don't do this. So you're going to look at something and go, God, that's stupid. Why would somebody do that? But we need to hear, and we're not going to hurt our feelings. I say that a little bit, but not really. Because we need you to tell us, well, why does that not make sense? And even more, we need you to tell us how we could do it differently and maybe get the same results. And that's how, because I heard someone say, well, they're going to be so onerous, nobody can comply with it. Well, the last thing we should be doing as a state right now is making regulations that are so overburdensome that people can't comply. Because then people aren't going to come into the regulated market, and that defeats the purpose of why we're setting up a state regulatory structure. But we also have this other side too, that we have to strike this balance. People are public safety concerns, consumer, patient safety, making sure people get safe product. So sometimes in our mind, when we're trying to do this, we're looking at it from that lens. And sometimes it takes people from the outside with a different eye for something to say, well, why don't you just do it this way? You probably can get the same result and we're all good. So I can't tell you enough we really do, I know it sounds like the government telling you we really want your feedback. We really do want your feedback because you know best how business can be done and how things can happen. We've tried to, in our regulations, you're going to see for all of us, we've tried to be consistent on things like ownership and the definition of premises. By the way, you'd think trying to come up with a definition for a premises, boy, that was no easy task. And then we thought we came up with a great definition and somebody told me that's really confusing. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, how can we make it less confusing? Because that was the last, we didn't intend to make it confusing. But sometimes, again, as regulators, we're used to how we talk and how things look. So open our eyes to these things. So we've tried to be consistent with public health, food and ag on those like ownership issues and stuff. So we're not asking for a lot of different things on our application. So the draft regs will go through everything you're going to need for an application. And by the way, it sounds really complicated because it's not a form, because it's all written out. So try to picture it in a form, and it'll look much better, by the way, when you present it in a form, because you read it like, wow, this is a lot of stuff. And then we've gone into with all the general provisions, and then each section is divided up. So for us, we have our dispensaries, there's a section just on that. There's a section just on transporters and distributors. And then the testing laboratories is a complete separate package. We came out with that a week later, and by the way, those are, I will say, they're pretty extensive, those testing lab regulations. A big heavy lift to do that. Our partners at Public Health helped us develop that because, as most of you know, originally in MCRSA, testing lab was with Public Health, and then it got switched to the Bureau. Well, we really didn't have the expertise. I mean, geez, from alcohol to like testing labs. So they helped us. And we are getting staffing, so we have that expertise in the house. So those are all out there. And you're going to see some things, and they may go, wow, where did they come up with that? Well, also you'll find there's the text of the reg, but part of California's rulemaking process, you have to justify why you put every reg in place. So there's another separate document that's longer than our text of the regs that is what we call an eyesore. Yeah, I know, it's interesting. Initial statement of reason, and we call it an eyesore because it's so long and it's like, wow. And so for every reg that you go, well, why did they put those hours of operation? You can go back to that eyesore, and it's our justification for why we think it should be in there and any documents that we relied on. So all of that information is our regs. How long? We also have an economic analysis. It's a couple hundred pages, but go through it. I know it's a lot, but I think it's something because this is going to affect you. Because on before January 2nd, you're going to be required to fill out an application. So all of this affects you and your business. So that leads me to IT systems. So all three of us, while we're doing our regs, are also standing up IT systems. So we all plan to have an online system that you can apply online. We are hoping, the Bureau is hoping to have their application up and ready sometime in the late fall. Not January 2nd, but before then. We won't be issuing licenses because we don't have to, you got to give us till January 2nd to do that. But it'll give us a good, first of all, it'll test out the system. So if you guys are on there and you're having problems, it gives us a little runway to fix bugs, to make sure when we look at the back end, we've got all the information, and then we can start communicating with you and get everything ready so we can begin issuing license on January 2nd. Likely, some of these we might not be able to vet them all, so we do have the ability to issue temporary licenses. So we're looking at those are already in compliance at the local jurisdiction that we could issue a temporary license until we have time to vet the application ourselves. We've also put in some transition periods in our regulations. You should look at those transition periods. I want to talk about two of them. One, if you're in compliance with the local jurisdiction, we are giving you time to get your application into us. We're giving you 6 months. So you can continue to operate, and you have 6 months until July 2nd of 2018 to get that application. How does that help us? not everybody's rushing to us all at once. It gives us time and it gives you time to get everything ready. We think that's needed. It's not that we don't care, we don't want you to come to us, we do, but it gives everybody some time because we know these regulations is going to take some time for it to get up to speed. The other thing is on the testing. And I've been hearing a lot of things about this, and I want to explain why we have a transition period for testing. So most of you, how many are probably already testing your product right now? A lot of you. So, which I think is awesome. So because testing, there's a lot, if you've looked at who's looked at our testing labs yet, our testing regulations? Yeah, there's a lot there, am I right? Yeah, which I'm going to hear about probably. But it's going to take you time to, first of all, it's going to take us time to get labs licensed and make sure they're up and running, testing for the right things. So we've allowed for either 180 days or until December 31st of 2018, whichever is sooner, to allow for you, if you're a dispensary or whatever, to sell your product that hasn't been tested under MCRSA until such time as we get all of our testing labs up and running and all that. And the only thing is that we're requiring that it has to be labeled if it hasn't been tested under MCRSA. Does that mean you can't test your product still? No, you can still test your product. We're just saying the requirements under MCRSA, we're giving another little leeway, a runway for us to make sure. Because the last thing we want is coming on day one and we don't have enough testing labs, and guess what? The product's not moving through the supply chain. And what does that do to you guys? It's not the best thing, right? Because mandatory testing, you don't want the bottleneck to be at the testing laboratory. So we're trying to look at ways that we don't create this bottleneck, but that we're still have consumer safety. And it's, like I said, it's a hard balance, but we really do think those transition periods are important. It's not because we don't think it's important to test the product, we absolutely do, but we're giving some time to get there. And I think it will be helpful. As for the testing labs, we're going to offer provisional licenses for them. So for ISO certification, for those that don't, we are understanding can take anywhere from 12 to 18 months to get your ISO certification. Well, we can't wait that long, right? So if we know they're operating and they have good standards and they meet everything else, they're just waiting for that, we're going to allow a provisional license for up to a year until they can get that ISO certification. So those are some of the things. I hope I've encouraged you to read these regs, because they're riveting, by the way. A little bit. So those are some things, and I really, like I said, I think it's important you weigh in, and we're open. Any suggestions you have, you can email us, you can call us, and I can say the same for our partners at Public Health and Food and Ag. Everybody's really working hard to make sure we have something we can all be proud of at the end of this. And again, I think we want to get to the panel. So thank you again for having me. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here.
Can you all hear me? Thank you, Lori. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the format tonight. So tonight we're going to have our wonderful panelists who I will introduce, and we'll have Lori up here. And this is basically going to be an open format. So everyone in the audience would really like to have an opportunity to ask the questions that you'd like to ask, but we'd like you to follow the guidelines. So when you get up, state your name, state your company, and your question only. And a question, I think, can usually happen within about 15 seconds. And I'll be here to let you know if it goes over. So I actually bought a squeaky rubber chicken to use, but I played a practical joke on my colleague, and I think he stole it. So I don't have it. So our panelists. So we have Julie Mercer-Ingram of Beck Law. Been a social justice attorney in Northern California for the past 7 years, and when she's not reading proposed regulations or writing contracts, she loves spending time with her 2 young boys and can often be seen riding her cargo bike around Petaluma. I'll look for you. So our next panelist is Logan of the Sonoma Sonoma County Growers Alliance. Familiar face. She's a Sonoma County native, active in organic and sustainable agriculture, including cannabis farming over the past 15 years. Townie has dedicated the past 2 years to supporting local and state regulations and developing effective policy through industry education and advocacy. Welcome, Townie. We also have Komp of California NORML, and she has been a cannabis and hemp activist for over 20 years. Quarterly hemp rallies and volunteering with LA NORML for quite some time. In 1992, she was elected to the California Board of Directors and is now the Deputy Director of California NORML. Welcome. So we're going to open this up to questions, and Aaron and Andrea will be going through the audience. And when you ask the questions, if you would like somebody in particular to answer, you can do that. And I would say to the panelists, if you feel like you have something to add, please, this is really a dialogue. Okay?
Hi, my name is Chrissy Strong. I work at Kiva Confections. We're a 6-year-old medical cannabis edibles company. I was going to say, Lori, I feel like we're all in really good hands, and I'm really excited about what you're going to be able to accomplish with all of our help. I wanted to know, at these public sort of feedback sessions, are we allowed to bring petitions? Are we allowed to read other patients' stories? Can we represent basically other people?
Wow, good thing I have my attorney with me. That's a great question.
Like lawyers, so you need one, right? Basically, it's a public comment form, so you can get up there with your time and comment however you see fit or appropriate. You can send in any written comments. The one thing to be aware of, though, like Lori mentioned, they're not interactive the way our other forums have been, and I think that's kind of a change in the way the bureaus approach things, in part just because of the way the legal process works. And also, you want to know that most likely at these forums we will have pretty strict time limits because we want to make sure everyone who comes to give an oral comment has that opportunity. The other thing you should also know is we don't treat oral comments or written comments differently. They'll both be responded to and evaluated under the same standards and given the same weight. So if you prefer to bring a written comment and just hand it in, if you prefer just to email and not come to the hearing, that's your choice.
Great, thank you.
Maybe we should bring the chicken with us.
Yeah.
And look at, she's got her legal pad and everything. It's like perfect.
Hi, I'm Alicia Rose. I'm the founder of Herba Buena. Really trying to just establish a new culture based on purity and quality for the industry as a whole, which is going to really depend on us getting this magical unicorn of a 10A license. I have cultivation permits that I'm really proud of in Mendocino, but I don't yet have the ability to get the retail license that I'm going to need, nor manufacturing space that can get permitted where I am. So how would you suggest going about getting this magical 10A license that people keep saying only the big guys are going to get? Is it better to just go forward and get our cultivation license now, or do we just like go out and buy any dispensary license that we can get and apply? Like, how do we get into the system, and will it be easy to expand once we are, I guess?
So there is a 10A license under MCRSA, and in order to apply for it, you have to have at least one retail dispensary. So I can't advise you on how you go about getting that dispensary license, but I would suggest that you wait to see what happens with the governor's budget trailer bill. I'm not giving you advice, but you might want to see what happens with that, because that likely is going to be decided in the next probably 6 weeks. And if it's going the way it looks like it is right now, there may not be a 10A license. It may be full vertical integration with the exception of the testing laboratories.
Any other comments from the rest of the panel on that question? Because I think it was a very good question.
That was the right answer.
Hi, my name is Alexa Garcia. I am founder and of Loma, California. We are cultivators, and also we have a delivery company in Sonoma County. And so my question is for you, Lori, and maybe the panel could chime in as well, but where do you see the future of delivery companies? And is that really going to be something that you think will have their own license come January 1?
The old delivery question. So currently, right now, the way things stand is there's not a separate delivery license because it's required that it has to be dispensary employees. Could that change? I don't know. Yes, it could change, but right now, no, there won't be a separate delivery license. So our regs do address delivery. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at them. I'd love to hear what you feel about them because we got a lot of strong opinions on that and how we went with it. We did try to strike a balance and maybe hopefully I hope we did. But I know there's a lot of talk about the non-storefront dispensaries. So I think that is more likely to happen than just like a delivery only license where there's a non-storefront where it's an actual premises where, you know, for a regulator, there's a place where you're storing your product and that stuff, but it's just not open to the public necessarily. So I think that's likely maybe to develop. Again, I think it's already currently pending legislation, and what happens, I don't know.
Yeah, it's in AB 64. It's currently in AB 64, the Bonta bill, the kind of cleanup bill, would allow for, I believe it is a storefront delivery. That's one of the bills. We're actually going to be lobbying at a lobby day on June 5th, if anyone wants to join us. That's one of the bills. And Lori's been invited, actually. I'm going to have to ask her about that again. But I don't know how you ever get your work done, girls.
I stay up really late.
Yeah.
Do either of you have comments about delivery? Because I know this is a very contentious issue for a lot of people.
I would say for all delivery companies to go ahead and put yourself in, try putting the regulator hat on. And, you know, you can speak to all the mamas and aunties and big sisters in the room, like, how would you guide that business if you had to be responsible for best practices? And then propose how you're going to meet those best practices and help flesh that out a little bit, because they are a lot of times kind of grasping in the dark. The learning curve that you've had over the last 18 months is insane. And that our industry has had it. So many women I spoke with tonight are saying the industry is changing so fast. We're asking our legislation and regulators to make regulations for a moving target for an industry that's evolving at rapid speed. We're all imagining something. Imagine how it works in a way that can be responsible and accountable, and then propose that. And I think that is where we strike that balance. So yeah, read the regs, and then as Lori was saying earlier, you know, pull what you see that's not fitting, make your recommendation, and then support it with why, and that's the most important piece. You have to give them your list of reasons.
And I'll just add that it's really great advice, Townie, and I think that it really, there's a lot of other models people are using besides just delivery, like direct to consumer in other ways, you know, events. Lots of people want to sell online, and those kind of models are how we do business nowadays. So allowing us to figure out a way to regulate that would be really helpful to the health of our
Other questions?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Eloise Beeson, and I'm an adult geriatric nurse practitioner. I'm not sure if anybody can answer this question, but I'm curious. I understand that the Department of Consumer Affairs is overseeing the regulatory board, right? And they also oversee nurses and licensing. I'm curious to know if there's any work being done right now to work with nurses or the nursing board in terms of allowing us to teach patients, work with patients. Is there anything going on in skilled nursing facilities? Hospitals are all afraid to allow patients to use this medicine. Do you have any advice for me on how I can get out there and help with that? Thank you.
Yeah, the nurses is under Department of Consumer Affairs, just like the medical board. You know, I don't know if there's anything being done. So my best advice would be to contact them. And I know, because I'm getting no answer. No answer? Well, maybe you can contact me and I can get you in touch with somebody you can contact over there. How about that? I could do that. But I don't really know because it's really not part of our purview, and it's not that we don't care. It would be difficult for us to be, that's really not our wheelhouse. So, but I'd be happy to do that. So I'll give you my card.
I just want to check, can everyone hear?
No.
Speak up a little bit. So everyone speak up, and also in the back, if everyone can keep it down if you're in the back talking, with some feedback. That's my rubber chicken. Speak a lot louder.
Hi, I'm Lisa Roberts. I'm a consultant and an event producer, and I haven't heard events mentioned in these regulations at all. Are there any event regulations that we should know about, or can we expect those, or what can we do in terms of to kind of write that protocol? It's such a great area when it comes to events.
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me? That's a great question. So you will not find anywhere in our regulation that talks about events. And just to let you know, so our regulations are what we are further defining the statute. So you have the statute, then we're further defining it by the by putting in the requirements. So the statute doesn't have, there's nothing in the statute that allows for, and when you say events, I'm assuming I'm putting on my alcohol, that's off premises where you're having an event. And so at this time, there is nothing in there, but that's something you may need to advocate through the legislature. And maybe these ladies have probably some strategies on that, I don't know.
Yeah, we are concerned about events, especially because there's a prescription against smoking in public in Prop 64, and that could actually impact events as well. So I don't know of the vehicle yet, but we do need to come up. I think is there anything in AB 64 about events? No, but let's talk after.
I love that.
This is where you need to get involved with your industry groups, with NORML and California Growers Association, and Sonoma County Growers Alliance, and the California Cannabis Industry Association. These are your groups that have been channeling and doing a lot of that work, and bring your solution to the teams who've been fighting this whole time with you, and have a nice clear access to bring that information forward and to think it out. Like, okay, we tried that didn't work. What if we try this? This is why it's so important. Everybody in the room to get involved with your industry association. It's so important that I'll just send that one home, because you have a direct line and access. A lobbying day. How many of you are going to show up for that lobbying day? This is how you meet them. Yes. Jump on the website, keep following. This is also the newsletters that you need to have, so that way you can get that feedback. If you read those regulations and it looks like ants in the snow, guess who's making the summaries? Definitely let's talk offline.
I also want to add that so much of this is new to regulators, and we take that for granted. We in our industry are in our bubble. We think we can talk to each other and explain things without starting from the beginning, and explaining how you've done successful events before, and what's been good and what have you learned, and sort of maybe even have a meeting with your state assemblyman or assemblywoman. And that's a great place to start, because I often forget that when I'm talking to clients, that some of them are way back here and some of them are way more advanced. So you have to kind of figure out where your audience is too.
That didn't answer your events question, but it's
follow
up. Let's make the solutions together.
And I know we just said something about using our voices, but I'm going to ask that people pretend, for those that are speaking into the mic, act as if we don't have a mic and just project, bring in your theater background, because I think some people in the back are having a hard time hearing. Oh, well, this microphone, okay.
It's this one.
Okay. Next question. Well, there's our solution.
I'm Ann Hamilton with Sonoma County Public Health. See, I can do this anymore. I'm in Public Health in Sonoma County. I'm interested in the cannabis-infused food products are getting more restrictive to non-hazardous foods, and I'm wondering if you're getting a lot of comments that might open that back up a little bit, because in talking to other states, there's a lot of really exciting products that are out there that are going to get shut down.
So public health developed the regulations because that's under the manufacturers.
Right.
So I don't know what comments they've been getting so far. They are having 2 regulation hearings, and one is in Santa Rosa, I believe, on, I want to say, the 8th maybe. I could be wrong.
Give me a minute, I'll pull it up.
So, yeah. And so, did you say you're in Sonoma? That'd be a good, if you can make it over there during their regulation hearing, and it'd be a good chance for you to see who's involved there and provide your comment.
Back here it is. 10 a.m. June 8th, 10 a.m., 50 East Street, Santa Rosa.
That's the big federal building. Can you raise your hand if you're a manufacturer or you do anything manufacturing? So this is a good percentage of the women in the room. If you have not read the manufacturing regs, you must. It completely leaves out post-processing, and we need to contemplate more education, more information about post-processing. This is my opinion, but my husband's a manufacturer, so it's pretty well informed opinion. And I will also say there are a lot of great things in these regulations. I think California regulators have done an excellent job, but it's all in the details. And I can tell you, as an attorney, paying attention to the details in the regulations could cost you your business or could make it a success. So.
And I'll add to that this is round 1. I had a great conversation with Laura Kaminsky up in Washington with the Cannabis Alliance, and after 4 years now with 502, guess how many bills are in legislation up in Washington this year, 4 years later? 43. Over 100. Okay, so we're just getting started. And unfortunately, this is the beginning of the end. This is the beginning of the end of prohibition. We are the trailblazers. We are the visionaries. Everything you're imagining, all the solutions and all the great ideas you're coming up with are setting the path for generations to come. It's not easy, but that's how change happens. And so we're all dedicated, and unfortunately that means moving target probably for the rest of your business. Prepare and know that, and create tools to successfully deal with moving target for the rest of your business so that you can make it through this. And this isn't just the cannabis industry. I've talked with ag farmers, dairy farmers, with a bookshelf of binders of regulations that they have to follow. So we're not being targeted and isolated, and we're not just like the one industry that's getting, we just happen to be the new industry, and California really likes to make up a lot of great, thoughtful, awesome, idealistic regulations. And we get to carry that dream forward. So remember that we are also the dreamers, and all of these, while it feels burdensome on our businesses, we're also moving this thing forward and creating something that's going to impact other industries. So the things that we're being under the magnifying glass for right now are also, and the solutions that we make are going to be paving the solutions for other industries to fall in line with lower carbon footprint, lowering pesticides in our baby food and then the apples on the shelf. So remember that as we go forward, that keep thinking and keep coming up with solutions and keep feeding them back, because they really are listening and trying to work with us.
Yeah, I just wanted to also reiterate how great this whole process has been, how wonderful that there's a woman in charge of the whole. The day after Prop 215 passed, my sheriff was in the newspaper saying he would no more sit down with marijuana distributors than he would rapists and murderers. So I've been around since the day when this was not at all acceptable. So every like you're right, the website, I shared that website, and I'm like, oh my God, there's a cannabis website. So it has been great, And yes, they are still drafts. I was surprised, very much surprised, when I saw those prescriptions on any dairy products, any kind of shellfish, or, which, I don't know of any shellfish products, but yeah, fruit juices. No juices, yeah. And I looked at the reasons, because I didn't hear that in any of the hearings or anyone bring that up. And I looked at the reasons, and it was just, there can be pathogens in those things. It's like, well, yeah, there could in any industry. Why is cannabis different? You think because we're stoned we can't, take care of the pathogens? Or, and then I started looking, I was like, well, I wonder who oversees dairy in California, and sure enough, there's a whole different branch of CDFA that does dairy. So it's like, are they just trying to sidestep all of that? Would that bring in a whole other level of regulation? But I don't know. I mean, does any milk chocolate product in California have to go through a whole dairy regulation? So that's something that's very concerning, as well as the issue in the governor's trailer bill about the separation of the manufacturing and the stuff. But so that might come up. And Lori, I don't know if you want to express your opinion on that, but make a question on that.
I'll add that USDA impacts those things a little bit, a lot of it actually, right? Because some of these regulations are actually overseen by USDA that haven't been managed by CFA or Department of Public Health and Administrative Fruit Juice. I'll add that.
Do you think that's a factor? I don't know that necessarily that's a factor, but I do think they did take it, even though it's not edible or considered a food under FDA, I do think they were looking at some of the regulations involved with food manufacturers too, because public health also regulates food manufacturers. But once again, I'm going to tell you, they're very open to have conversations. I've been working with them quite a bit, and so I really think, I can't say it enough, they're draft regulations. So that means, and that's why we have these out now, because even if they get pulled back, a lot of this goes in the adult regulations. So this feedback is excellent. So.
I just want to add props to the Department of Health in Sonoma County. They came up with their own health ordinance. It's actually got some great stuff in it. So if you're looking for examples of alternatives to suggest to the state, check out the Sonoma County Health Department ordinance.
We're
on their website, sonomacounty.ca.gov/cannabis.
Also, San Francisco has some food handling rules. Yeah.
All right, Marie, Corona Life.
Yeah, hi. Sir?
Yeah.
Okay, hi, everybody. This question's kind of a backtrack us just a little bit back to delivery services. When the proposed regulations came out, I started a petition on change.org about non-storefront deliveries. I got almost 300 signatures, so I'm going to get 500. Is there any way to get those signatures all together sent in as like a comment to you guys? Does that do anything? Is that using my voice and everybody else's voice, or is it not at all? Thank you.
You can send it in, but what is the purpose of the petition?
The purpose of the petition was to get the language like of AB 64 to push through and just give delivery services or non-storefronts licensing.
So for us, our comments are specific to the proposed regulations. So anything that has to do with the budget trailer bill should be probably sent to the author's office or whatnot, because the legislature is going to be the one voting on the budget trailer bill. And it is not the role of the state regulator to advocate a certain position. Our role is when they pass the law, they say, you put it together and put the regulations in place. So that is our role. So the comments you can send them to us, but it wouldn't have the effect that you're looking for. You need or even go like Time was saying, the association, that might be helpful to send them there too.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Pran. I'm the Vice Chair of the Legalization Task Force for San Francisco, and I'm also the Director of Education for the Apothecarian. Some of my most critically ill patients are on fixed incomes, and I'm really concerned about regulations about being able to give away product, because there are two things. One, when we are able to have our vendors actually table, it's a huge financial risk for some of our most critically ill patients on fixed incomes to actually try and get medicine. It's not covered by insurance. And so for them to have the opportunity to be able to try something for free and then be able to come back to get it is great. And pharmaceutical reps get to do this all the time. My mom is a cancer researcher, and she actually ran an oncology practice, and that was one of her biggest things. She was like, please make medication affordable for my patients. And so this is a big thing. And also, I run a program called MedBox, which gives our most critically ill patients supplemental medicine. It's actually donated by our vendors. And it makes a huge difference in their lives, because I have patients who have an expendable income of $20 a day. And so we really need to do something, because in the spirit of medical cannabis, it was about getting medicine to our most critically ill patients, and how can we do that if they can't afford it?
So we've been hearing a lot about that. So, and very articulate how you explain that. So I think what I would we really love having a conversation, sitting down, how we can get how we can go about it. Because the reason we aren't allowing giveaways is because, and I'll be honest with you, we looked at some of the other products, and when you are able to give free goods and whatnot, it can tend to, get to youth access to cannabis. You're looking at, encouraging people to buy more, but that's really more at an adult use. So that's sometimes where adult and medical, sometimes they don't align as well as you'd like. So I think we could get there. Help us how we get there for those critically ill patients that need it, and I think we can get there. So I'm just not sure. I need your help, I think. And yeah. Okay.
Thank you. It's not just in the spirit of 215, it's the law that Proposition 215, which was passed by the voters of California without any provision in it allowing the legislature or anyone to change it, like Prop 64 has, says that the state is required to regulate it in order to assure safe access for patients. And so this, I think, falls under that, and it should be looked at in that light.
Any more questions?
There's one in the back.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Ms. Ajax. I'm Amber Center. I'm the Executive Director of Supernova Women. I'm also CEO of Leisure Life, which is an edibles and infused products brand. And I'm coming to you today to make a statement, as well as, not on behalf of manufacturers as it is so much as being a patient. So I suffer from lupus and a number of other autoimmune diseases, and I rely a lot on cannabis as medicine. Just about 2 weeks ago, I was so sick that I couldn't get out of bed, and I ended up consuming about 1,500 milligrams of a 5-to-1 CBD THC full extract cannabis oil. And if I didn't do that, I would have ended up at the hospital. So my challenge to you is, how much would this cost? How much would that medicine have cost me under the regulated market as the things are written, as they are currently? How would that been packaged? How would I have been able to purchase that? That was 1,500 milligrams, and it cost me $60. So I'm really concerned for the patients and people like me. How much is this going to cost under the regulated market?
I don't have an exact answer for you, but you are right. Going into a regulated market does increase prices. We found that because when we put together these regulations, they're considered major regulations. So all three licensing authorities had to do an economic analysis. And one of the things we looked at as a bureau as we sat down with our economists, because where we first started with our regs and where we ended up with what you saw is very different. So we had some, probably what you would call overburdensome regs, and our economists have said, you know how much that's going to cost the industry if you put that in? And sometimes you don't look at that thing as a regulator. You're like, no, I didn't even look at it. Think about that. And they help guide us to try to make sure that we're still making sure we have public safety, but we are trying to, once again, we didn't want to make it so expensive, but to tell you that the price isn't going to go up with regulations, it is. But we have to make it so it's not going up. So, because the last thing we want is patients not being able to get their medicine. So that's a piece we've got to figure out here. And we can do better, right? I mean, and so I think with folks like you continuing to bring it up and saying, what are you going to do about it, state? Because I'll tell you what, this is an industry that is moving so quickly. And you know, you're dealing with a government that doesn't usually move so quickly, right? And again, I go back to alcohol. They're still 80 years later. They're still trying to get some change, and and everything's moving so quickly. And so, yes, I think you've got to be a little patient with us because there's so much going on, and it's a moving target. But you got to keep bringing. I can't tell you. You're not going to get me upset. You keep bringing it up. If we haven't solved it, you say, "Hey, what about this?" Keep bringing it up because we've got to deal with these things. And I appreciate that, by the way. Thank you.
So my name is Jacqueline, and I'm a patient advocate who lives in Marin County. I just graduated from the Hood Incubator and am implementing a delivery service to increase accessibility in West Marin. Marin County doesn't want to deal with adults consumption, but they say that they do want patients to have access. So I'm completely within my right to begin a patient collective, which I've heard are going to be obsolete. So my actually have two questions. Are these state regulations going to protect us from the feds? And how do we make the medical cannabis industry more accessible to people with disabilities, many of whom are extremely low income and are not going to be able to afford an increased cost up to their medicine.
So one thing we haven't talked a lot about, and you sort of alluded to it, is the local control piece here. And I think that has to be part of the conversation when we're talking about affordable medicine, making sure delivery, you can deliver in a local jurisdiction, because we can't issue a state license if it goes against a local ordinance or regulation. So I think along with all of this, I would be remiss not to say we should always be constantly talking to the local jurisdiction and educating them too, because they're also struggling. And a lot of them, well, I don't mean that I didn't mean that in a negative way, but a lot of them have done, Oakland is ahead of the curve on most jurisdictions, so I think there's a lot of, that we can look to Oakland and even Sacramento and San Jose. There's some of them that do have comprehensive regulations in place, but then you have some that really have just been waiting for the state to get our regulations in place. And so now we have them in place, and so now it's like, here you go, and it's on us too to educate them and say, hey, this is what's going on, and forgetting, the last thing we need with the regulated market, even though we know regulations is going to cost, but we don't want it to a point where people aren't going to come in and they're still going to go to the black market. I said that earlier. This doesn't work that way. As for the federal question, and I get that question a lot. It's probably one of the toughest questions to answer. Can our regulation protect from the federal government? I don't know that any of us can make a commitment that we don't know. We don't have any control over that piece. But I believe that if we have a great regulatory system in place, and that's a model, and that things are working well here in California, there'd be no reason for them to come in. And that's how I think about it. We just got to do our job. We have a state law. We got to put it in place, and we got to make it the best there is out there, and not give them an incentive to come here, right? I don't know. That's about right now. That's what I think we can do as the regulator, as an industry.
Yeah, the Mercer, I like Mercer a little better, was written with an eye to the federal coal memo, which is where a lot of the state programs have been predicated on, and it lists certain things that the feds were, going to look for to come in, and we're not going to come in if they were in place, like not diverting to other states and keeping away from children. It says some of the track and trace and things like that were put in place for that reason. And even Jeff Sessions has said that he thought that there were some useful things in the coal memo. And now as most people know, what's now the Rohrbacher-Blumenauer Amendment has been extended at least through September. It's signed by Trump. He put a little statement on about it. He didn't tweet about it. There's a lot in flux, so that is a hard question to answer, but there is some solid footing, that much more solid than California actually had ever been on as far as the federal government goes. Oh yeah, and the Ninth Circuit case upheld the Rohrbacher.
So no federal enforcement. When Congress defunded the federal enforcement, the Ninth Circuit upheld is it not working anymore? Well, so we have some protections until September, and we were especially protected in the Ninth Circuit after the ruling about no enforcement.
I just want to make a quick announcement. If the back can be quiet because it is echoing pretty loud in here, just so we can all hear accordingly. Thanks.
Hey, nobody answered my disabilities.
Yeah, sorry, there's a lot of questions.
It's okay.
Sorry, can you address that?
Oh, I did have one thing to say about that. We are, right now, medical patients with an ID card do get an exemption from the state sales and use tax, which is 7.5% or more.
Right.
And not all collectives know this, but that is the case, and that happened the day after Prop 64 passed. The governor's trailer bill will get rid of the ID card program, which has always been voluntary, and we've never been that big a fan of it, but the way it's written, we're not sure whether a patient would still be able to get that sales tax reduction with just a doctor's recommendation. So we're not going to support the end of the ID card program unless the patient can still get at least the sales tax relief with just a recommendation. And we would like to see more tax relief for patients.
I'm sorry. My apology. No.
This is going to the conversation with the med box, access that's affordable. While you do have to, you can't give away, dime bags. we could bring back $9. It doesn't have to be $50. So there are ways to work with the system and get creative, just putting it out there.
I'm Constance Finley with Constance Therapeutics. Collective started in 2008. We're global pioneers in the medical extraction space. We started making CBD first here, or at least among the very first here in California. Long history of trying to do things right. And I apologize because I have a little bit of a statement as a preamble to my question. We're 3/4 of the way through ISO 9000. We have 3 patents pending on our process. Our cost of goods is at least 20 times what people who do it off the street, right? If you do this right in biotech lab, your costs are significantly higher, way higher. Then I was in Richmond and had been from the very beginning, business license, inspected, et cetera, Richmond, California decided that Green Rush Cannabis was the answer to their mismanagement of their city. And after 21 years and a year and a half of trying to get a license from Richmond, always being legal, I moved to San Francisco, where the city acknowledges that cannabis is a regular business and should be treated as such. And next year, the difference in what I'm going to pay in Richmond versus San Francisco will be approximately $400,000, enough to buy San Francisco real estate. How do I serve my patients when Richmond and other locales want to add as much as 30%? And we're not a backyard operation. We're recognized globally. 7 different governments have asked us to be in their countries. Of course, our cost of goods is higher to do it right. And this is an issue that I think the state really needs to be paying attention to. Cannabis is not the answer to every societal problem that exists in the world.
Who wants to tackle that one?
I think it's just riffing off of your statement, helping clients put together applications in Santa Rosa where we have open permits, and the aggregate cost of those applications on top of the taxation, the professionals, I don't believe that those are anticipated by these regulations or by anyone really until they get into it. And I just want you to know that I heard you, and I work with this all the time, and it is very expensive, and I applaud you for trying to do it in a way that is reputable.
Can I say that San Francisco sent us congratulations as the first open cannabis company licensed for extraction last month?
The local taxation is definitely a problem. Other states, Colorado, for example, caps local taxation in their initiative at 2 or 3%. Prop 64 had no cap, unlike Reform CA, the one we wanted, which would have capped it at 5% return from the state. But the good news is we're already starting to see downward pressure on local taxation. I'm seeing, companies moving out of places that have higher taxes, and in order to become competitive to get a business in your district now, I think you're going to have to come in with a reasonable tax rate. We're probably going to see some more ballot measures, and with maybe some more reasonable tax rates. So that's happening a lot quicker than I thought it was going to happen, and that's the upside.
But do you think it's reasonable to assume that, given Constance's question, that the taxation could be capped? Because this is a huge issue, because you don't want businesses moving from one city to another city, and then we're all clustered in Oakland or all one place, and it makes no sense. And this will single-handedly drive the black market. So,
I don't think there's ever going to be the will in the state legislature to exert that kind of local control. There's a lot of lobbying for local control in the state legislature, the League of Cities, and the RCRC, and everyone. So I think it'll just be a market force that brings it down at this point. And it would also be a change to Prop 64, which would require a two-thirds vote.
Just to add, dealing with Sonoma County and the city of Santa Rosa over the last year, the local jurisdictions are, you can show them a comparative analysis of what they're presenting if you do your homework and say, well, here's what's happening in these other jurisdictions and this is how you're comparing, and if you're not going to work with us, we're taking our business out of this town and you're not going to get any tax money. You know, so do some of that homework and help bring them.
We've had some success in Sonoma County, and we're mostly in Santa Rosa, with coming up with alternatives like, okay, it's a 2-year cap, and then we're going to have a majority vote to go. So if you're working with your local government on the taxation issue, consider not just the tax rate, but how it's rolled out. If there's an advisory committee that's made of, and some of the other areas.
And actually, to bounce on a conversation that was happening earlier that I think is really important to put out to the whole, think tank in this room, which is, this is not the time to diversify. You have to have a unified voice as an industry. I know that the competition is starting to feel high because you all have a lot of skin in the game. You have to keep working together. The moment you start competing with each other, is when you start to lose traction, and we're seeing that. We saw that loss of traction in Marin. We're seeing that, we've seen that loss of traction in Mendocino. Stay together, work on the things that you can agree on, and stay focused on that so that you do have some wins, and then grow from there.
Okay, so I just want to say that we're at 8:30. I think we have a bunch more questions in the room. So maybe Aaron back there, if people who want to ask questions, if you could just line up. And we're going to very quickly go through the last questions and leave, I think, 15 minutes to socialize.
Hi, so my name is Nina Parks. I have a delivery service in San Francisco called Garage Medicinal. And also, I'm a co-founder of Supernova Women with Amber Center and Andrea Answorth over here as well. So one of my questions is, how is the state going to deal with things like Oakland's equity permitting program, right? Because they have like an incubator permitting program where you can actually go in and have a general applicant and then a equity applicant come in and they provide them with certain economic help, right? So how does that actually line up with what the state is going to do? Is the state also going to have an equity program? Because this question of economic accessibility, especially for communities of color that have been the target of the drug war, legalization should benefit them the most because they've literally lost parents, children, access to education, tons of things for having felony records as a cannabis felon, correct? So, there's plenty of stats to be able to back that up. So how is the state going to address this issue? Because we also have California that has the number 3 prison population in the entire world next to China and the rest of the United States. So that industry meeting up with this industry, right? So the prison industrial industry meeting up with the cannabis industry that has been a policy that has targeted and created criminals and now creating business people. How do those people transition over? And then also, how is that economically accessible on the state level when you have cities that are developing equity programs to actually help to combat that?
So we don't have I wouldn't necessarily, there's nothing in our regs that's necessarily what I call an equity program, because these are regulations that they're basically the base for all of statewide that everybody has to follow. But we do have provisions in there for folks that do have convictions, and we lay out, how they can still get a license through a rehabilitation criteria that I think we're hoping will be effective, but I also think it's good to weigh in on it, because one of the things we have in there, if you have a criminal conviction that as of the date of your application is no longer considered a misdemeanor or felony, it's not going to be held against you. So there are things like that in there. The locals there's a lot of locals that are looking at different equity programs, and so again, it's the play between, when you look at MCRSA, you have to have a local permit or license in order to come to the state to get a license. So a lot of these initial decisions are being made at the local level. So if somebody gets a local permit then they come to the state. Under AUMA, it's a little different. They don't have to bring us a license, but they still have to be, we can't issue a license that goes against, that is a violation of a local ordinance or regulation. So what we're looking at is if Oakland approves somebody, then it comes to us. We can't just issue a license to somebody unless they're approved through the local. So I think it's got to be working together with the local. The difficulty with us for California is we have over 500 different cities and counties. So then it gets very difficult for the state to be, because not every city and county is consistent. And that, I think, that's a broader discussion, not with the Bureau, but it has to take, I think, the legislature, the association, the cities and counties, because we have to, our policy is statewide, and it's hard to have that consistency. So those are things we still need to work out. And I know it's a very important issue, and we talk a lot about it. And so,
We'll continue the conversation.
Yeah,
I know this is not something I can handle. I just want to add really quickly is if you think your locals are doing something good, talk to them and ask them to go to the state and tell them about it, because we're doing good things around ethanol in Santa Rosa that's not in line with what the regs are, and I think that the city's actually going to go to, we've tried to convince them to go to the state and petition with their reasoning, like why they did this, and I think that's a great example of working with your local government.
Hi, I'm Danielle. I'm office manager for Dr. Frank Lucido in Berkeley for 10 years, and he's been primary care for 40 years, and he was the first cannabis doctor to recommend for kids. So we've seen over 300 severely disabled kids since 2009, and it's an idea that, we welcome regulation for sure, so thank you so much, because our kids have very limited immune systems, and it's really an issue of the doctor being able to recommend specific products. Unfortunately, over time, we've had to start looking at specific products and distributors. It's risky for him to do that, but he has no choice. So I guess tonight I'm thinking more about, if health insurance could help the families of the kids, maybe that would be a way to deal with this. This is a really specific set of patients that we deal with. We see adult patients too, but the kids have such a specific need. So if we could keep that in mind as we move forward, I think if we can set up a system that works for the families, then that would be serving all of the patients. So we just keep thinking about, health insurance. If they could cover it, starting with the kids, because that's so obvious, maybe that would help with all this regulation. Not so much a question.
Hi, I'm Sabrina. I'm with Berkeley Patients Group, and I actually have a question. First, I want to thank you, Lori, for everything that you've done with this whole process. This is unbelievable the way that you have been able to bring this whole thing together in such a short period of time in such a transparent, open, and inclusive way. It's just, we have to all give you a raise. I can't imagine what you have to do, so, I bow down to you. Thank you. I have a question. I don't think we touched a little bit on the federal issue, but my main question is, I know that in the Bureau draft regulations, there's one discussion of separating distributors from the non-medical and the medical. So there was one I know this is medical conversation, not recreational, but there was that one section that says distributors have to have separate facilities, or there's a separation for medical and non-medical in distribution. And then in the trailer bill, there's an explicit prohibition on co-location for medical and non-medical licensees. So unless it's addressed in the regulations, which it's not addressed in the regulations other than for the distributors, which forces the separation. So, and my understanding is the reason for the trailer bill's restriction on that separation is to protect medical from federal interference. and I'm sure you've heard about this. This is not the first time you've heard, I'm sure. But I'm just wondering if, people bringing that conversation to the public comment opportunity that we have in the next couple of weeks or days, if that's a worthy cause if that's a worthy place for us to bring that issue up, because I think that the co-location allowance is something that's very important to pretty much everybody in the industry. Nobody wants to duplicate their efforts. And and I know that if the trailer, but there's issues with whether the trailer bill is going to pass and how all of that works and if it all fits together, but if it does pass and it has that restriction and there's no acknowledgement of that being allowed in the regulations, or how are we going to rectify that?
Okay, wow. So by the way, I have an awesome staff. So believe me, there's no me doing all this. I have a great staff. I just wanted to give a shout out because we do have some really great, enthusiastic people that are just so committed to this. So anyway, so I think and I could be wrong, I think what you're referring to in our distributor regulation is there is something that talks about that if you're carrying medical cannabis, you can't also be carrying any other goods. And I don't know if we use the term non-medical goods, we may have, but meaning you can't be also delivering alcohol and things of that nature. That's what that was getting at. I think that's what you're talking about, but I got the regs with me, so we can go through it if you want. But, because since they were the medical regs, we weren't addressing adult non-medical. So it may be how we phrased it that's confusing, and we can clarify that, by the way.
Well, I think in the trailer bill it actually does specifically address no.
Correct. That's correct. I think, but I guess what I was saying in our reg, we weren't meaning
We were addressing recreation.
Correct, in our regs, because they were only for MCRSA. It was making sure when you're making deliveries, you're not having other products. Correct, yes. And so we may need, so I think, but I could be wrong, but you're right. In the trailer bill, there's an M license and an A license, and basically you can't have this, you have to somehow separate your premises. And I can't speak to why that's in there. It could be because of the federal intervention. So for us, we're looking and seeing what happens with that, because I think there's been a lot of discussion with the stakeholders and whatnot, because I think there's a lot of people that don't really like that. And as a regulator, it's a little more difficult for us too, by the way, because it's when you have a dispensary, how do you separate it, and what does that separation look like? Is it a wall? Is it you painted on? And so, I mean, for ease for us, we're hoping somehow there's some kind of maybe different alignment there. So we'll see what happens on that. But I'm happy to discuss the distributor regulations, and you're welcome to provide those comments to us too.
Okay, I'm going to do a time check. We have 5 minutes for questions and answers from here on out, and then we're going to have social hour. And so, Erin.
Super fast. Hi, my name's Allie Butler. I'm the founder of this company called Pepperins. I make really tiny, really awesome hash carts. And I started this company a few years ago because I wanted to do better than what was currently out there in the industry. I wanted to break the glass ceiling, say no to the people that said I couldn't be a manager, and go for it. So I produce a product that is handmade with love. I put ice water hash in my joints. 10% of the joints is hash, 90% is flour. This is in regards to the medical cannabis testing regulation. I'm a very small business. I still have public health training from NYU. That's where I went to grad school. Studied biostatistics. I'm testing a lot of my stuff with CW, and what they have told me when I'm taking a hash sample or anything is that I should treat it like a soil sample. Looking at the new regulations, 10% of my total product is hash at the flour and at the total heparin level would increase the cost of my product to the point that it would not be, in my mind, affordable for the patients that I designed it for. Patients like my mom who's not around anymore. And I really think that that's super important. I think that there has to be a way to scientifically look at those numbers to reduce them to a reasonable point so that producers aren't giving away, overall total 40% of their total product just for testing. I use really great quality whole melt ice water hash in my products, and I really care about pesticides and microbiological testing, and I really care about patients and their health, and I really want to keep rocking on and doing this and be a small business owner in 10 years. And I'm cool with it being a really small business as long as I can keep on doing it. So if you guys can have that help, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So the actual mandatory testing of the final product is in statute, so we can't change that part. But I think you're getting at the levels of the testing for like pesticide residues and am I volume or batch? Oh, the volume of the batch size. So what is your suggestion?
Okay. It's a maximum of 10 pounds, right? So if somebody were to use 10 pounds, then the lab would get a total pound to test, which would be great. But somebody like me who's maybe buying 30 grams of hash at a time and it's really quality hash, and testing 3 grams, that's already good enough for my lab, which is really fantastic. But if I were to up that a lot, I would have to look at it would be sustainable for my business.
Okay. So the whole, how we came up with the batch, it's all in the testing lab, but if you think our logic was not, we didn't really, is it gonna affect you as a small business?
It is. I think you guys are really close, but
okay, so I need that. I need you to tell us why. We're really close, I love that, because I think there's some, I think we're open to looking at that.
Okay.
And so.
My name is Rebecca Byers, and I'm co-founder of the Agathis Collective, which is a consulting and in-home consulting delivery service. We've been working for the last couple of years with hundreds of seniors in Contra Costa County. We've heard about delivery services. My concerns are mirrored with theirs. I'm not going to go there. I have a background in human relations and labor law, so my question pertains to the people that we're all serving and talking about wanting to continue serving. I think we're all familiar with the fact that federal law preempts state law with cannabis in most regard. We have a state agency called the Department of Fair Employment and Housing that often preempts state law or federal law when there's a conflict, but we're not seeing this yet with cannabis. So my question is to the panel, do you predict that in the next year, as things move forward, that the people that we're serving will have more protection? And if not, what more can we all be doing as an industry to protect these people?
Woohoo!
You know, we all talk about some of the downsides and costs to our business for regulation, but I think we forget about the benefits of regulation. And some of those benefits are that, you know, it's going to be a healthier experience for patients, and it's going to be a healthier and safer place for the people working in these industries, as well as the owners. You know, we have a lot of people who face horrible crimes and can't report it because they're afraid of law enforcement. We have people who have horrible wage and hour violations and they don't feel like they work in a place that they can get a protection. And I think that that's, you know, once you become a regulated marketplace, all of the laws apply to your business just like any other business. So yeah, that's something to consider as business owners. You have to start functioning on the books like every other business, which is going to be new to a lot of people who've just been, you know, in a different culture. And, you know, we've talked a lot about industry, but I think we need to also recognize that we're from a culture here. And bringing ourselves into the regulated marketplace and maintain our culture and our values in terms of patients and serving patients will be really important, but I think it's really exciting I've always been a social justice attorney, so knowing that people are going to be protected in the workplace is really exciting to me.
I know we're running out of time, but yeah, thanks for bringing up housing because, you know, I say we may be legalized, but we're a long way still to acceptance. And the three big areas are housing, as you've mentioned, employment rights, and we also have issues with pain patients being kicked off their opiate prescriptions because they're using cannabis. And we actually have, we're going to at Lobby Day try and get an employment bill introduced. We're still looking for an author for one. Everybody was doing regulation bills this year, and ACA and everything else. But we do have some interest, and we're going to have to probably focus on medical patients first for employment rights because of the way Prop 64 was written. But there are 11 other states now that have employment rights protections for medical marijuana patients. And Arkansas just and California doesn't have it.
And yes, so then the pain patients, because that's been very critical. There's been a lot in the news about that. But also housing is a problem, and especially too with the way that you can't smoke in public with Prop 64, and so where are patients going to go and do it? So that's on our radar definitely. And how can people help? They can come, they can support NORML and the other industry groups that come to Lobby Day and talk to their elected officials about that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for such a lovely evening. Unfortunately, we have to cut out questions. Really quick, if I can have your attention, a couple of points of detail. So I just want to thank our host here at Gateway. I want to thank Lori, Julie, I believe we all got something from this magical night, and the power of the woman and the power of community in the cannabis space is so amazing. So please look for more emails to come for future events. I think it's very obvious we want more of this. If you have questions or comments, please reach out to us directly. And thank you all for coming to the first event of ours.